Well, welcome back to my corner of the multiverse and your guilty pleasure. Happy hump day, y'all. So glad you could join me. If this is your first time, you have reached the Salty Goddess podcast, and I'm Margaret. You're definitely going to want to buckle in, boys and girls, because this one's going to be interesting. Now, if you were here last week, you know it was a good time. So be sure, be certain, follow, share, subscribe, and download. Come back and see me every Wednesday at 0500 for that salty drop you just can't let go of. So we started a new arc last week asking a very important question. Ego or confidence? Which one is running your life? So this week, we went from audit, or I should say from assessment to audit. So recognition is important. Awareness is important. But if you do nothing with it, who gives a shit if you gave it a name? If you're not going to eradicate the problem, then the problem is you in totality. Okay? So, if you don't examine yourself, your own behavior, it's almost as if you went window shopping, put a bunch of shit in your cart, and, when you're online shopping, and then you never check out. You never follow through. That's performative. When you are looking at the expensive truth through the glass, admiring it, commenting on it, and then walking away without buying anything, we call that performative self-awareness. And we don't do that. We don't do that here. We do functional self-leadership. Functional self-awareness. So today, we're going to audit the behaviors. And not just your behaviors. Not just yours. But also those that you allow in your court. Now, you got to audit thyself first. Because there are times when you are the ego-led menace in the room. And I'll tell you that self-awareness is far less expensive than relational bankruptcy, i.e. people walking out on your life. Then we need to audit the court because sometimes your behavior allows people into the inner sanctum, into the throne room that don't earn it. They don't deserve it. So they don't deserve access to your time, your most valuable currency, your energy, your strategies, your vulnerabilities, your peace, or your throne room. And this episode is about figuring out two very important things. One, is my operating system ego or confidence? And then you need to know whether or not you've granted court access to people who should have been left outside the gate, beyond the moat, okay? With limited visiting hours and no access to your good silver. Because, my friends, not everyone belongs in the throne room. Some belong in the inner court, some belong in the outer court, some belong at the gate, and others should be in the moat with the crocodiles. All right? Some people belong outside the kingdom entirely, waving from a safe distance where their chaos cannot touch your inner peace. So let's get down to it. The core question we need to answer during this week when you do your self-audit: are you being led by ego And do I allow ego-led people too much access? Because confidence is not just knowing who you are. Confidence is knowing who should have access and who should not. And before this gets too spicy for y'all, before y'all get those feelings hurt, let's get something clear. An audit is not an attack. An audit is an honest review of what is working, what is not, what your actions are costing you, what is aligned, what is misaligned, and then things that need to be handled before they become a full-blown relational, professional, emotional, or reputational, 5-alarm and dumpster fire. All right? Businesses do audits. Healthcare programs do audits. Financial systems do audits. Federal grant programs do audits. But somehow, when I make the suggestion that we should audit our own behavior, individuals act as if we've asked them to surrender their organs in a parking lot where they're going to wake up in a bathtub filled with ice. Calm yourselves down, my rhinestone friends. Calm yourself. Because an audit renders data. Data is unemotional. Data is not disrespect. It's not shame. It's not condemnation. It is information. Okay? The issue for some individuals, when given information or data, they have a stroke because you've pointed out something that makes them uncomfortable, that potentially is injurious to their image. Those are ego-led individuals. Confident-led or confidence-led individuals look over the data and go, there's truth there. And what can I do with that truth? What things do I need to adjust or readjust? Those that are ego-led will say things like, you're attacking me. Confidence-led people can admit that sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but they're able to look at that data and go, but it is the truth. Now, let's not get anything twisted, okay? There are polite ways, tactful ways, and then very mean, rotten ways to launch the truth at someone or launch data at someone. I've been accused myself of being a little bit too harsh, a little bit too straightforward. Some people have called it my New York self or my street self, having been a 30-plus year paramedic, okay? But I am almost always tactful, all right? But I do tell the truth. If you don't want the truth, do not ask me for it, because I will give it to you. All right? When you are ego-led, the only thing you're concerned about is your image. That's it. But confident-led people, they are there to protect their integrity and their character. And that's why this is so important. Because if you can't examine your own behavior without losing your cool, you're not operating from confidence. You're operating from a space called emotional protection. And emotional protection, or guarding, explains your janky behavior. However, now that it's been explained, you know. Therefore, it is not an excuse for you to depend on to get away with your janky behavior, if that makes sense. I get it. Every single one of us at one point or another in our lives has led from an ego place. Seriously, we have. It's normal. But as we age and we grow and we accumulate knowledge and we have successful things under our belts, we should become confident in who and what we are and our value. All right? If you are still in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and dare I even say into the 70s, still coming from a place where you are ego-led, please sit the fuck down and get a therapist. Just start calling right now. It is so unnecessary. And as you get further down that timeline, the more important it is that you give a phone call to somebody. I can even excuse it into your mid 40s, but after that, I can't. All right. So let's define those differences in very plain language. Ego-led behavior is the behavior designed to protect your image, to avoid discomfort, to escape accountability, to preserve control of a situation, and to prevent exposure of the areas of your life that you're not confident about. But believe it or not, confidence-led behavior is behavior that is rooted in self-trust, integrity, accountability, curiosity, emotional regulation, alignment with your values. It is your character through and through. Ego-led people protect the image that they hope to preserve. And that image is not always aligned with their character. Because if they were aligning with their character, they'd be confident. They'd be confident in who they are. Ego-led people are worried about the way they look, whether or not they've won, whether or not they're being blamed. All right? Whether or not I've protected the version of myself that I want them to believe in. That's not where confidence-led people are coming from, right? What can I learn? What can I repair? What is aligned with my values? What is the mature, emotionally regulated thing to do here? What is true? What is mine to own? And that's the audit. It's not whether or not you're fabulous. You may very well be fabulous. But fabulous without self-awareness is just glitter on a shitsicle. Pretty? Mm-hmm. Safe to eat? Abso-fucking-lutely not. No. So, your internal audit stops pointing across the room long enough to say, is it me? And I'm going to tell you, that's not always comfortable. Nobody wants to discover that they are the ones that are ego-led. All right? But you're grown, and grown people do grown work. And self-awareness and self-auditing is grown-ass work. When you feel challenged, corrected, ignored, rejected, what version of you takes over? Do you become defensive right off the bat? Do you seek victory? Do you explain away any problems or the impact of your actions, your behaviors, or your words? Do you take ownership or do you retaliate? Do I need someone else to be the villain so I can preserve my look of innocence? Because again, ego is image protection. Confidence is value protection. So am I protecting my image or am I upholding my character? That's the important part. So how do you respond when someone corrects you? Do you feel embarrassed, get hot, you get tight? You start to argue tiny little details that, change the direction of the conversation. All right. That's ego trying to negotiate its way out of discomfort. All right. Let's not pretend, though, that every person offering feedback is some emotionally evolved woodland creature handing you wisdom in a pretty little basket with flowers and bows and ribbons. Some people correct poorly. They're condescending. They're rude. Or, they're professional grade jackholes. But can I separate the delivery from the data? I don't like how that was said to me, but is the data accurate? That's a confident-led person's response. An ego-led person says, I don't like the way they said that, and I don't even have to consider whether or not they're right. It's moot. No, my friends. That's how you stay emotionally underdeveloped and then develop excellent excuses for your behavior. Confidence-led people can be corrected and accept feedback without becoming an emotional wreck. All right? It still stings, but they recover, reflect, and respond. Okay? When an ego-led person is corrected, they see it as humiliation, rejection, attack, or a loss of status amongst the people that are around them. So they try to defend or deflect, to minimize, to become the victim. All right? Or they'll litigate the tone that you use to give them the feedback. Suddenly, the original issue is buried under like layers and layers and layers of bullshit. That is not confidence. So, when you're corrected, or when your error is pointed out, do you listen? Take it under consideration? Or have you already got your attorney on speed dial and you're preparing your defense? Can you say, you're right? Can you separate the tone from the truths? Do you understand that it's a correction and not the end of the world? All right. And then at the end of the day, can you apologize cleanly? Or do you have to staple a list of excuses? Like each one of them is just like a hall pass to get away with the bullshit you just did. So listen, if you're confidence-led, you can say, I missed that error. Thanks for pointing it out, and I'll make sure I correct it. That's it. No opera, no courtroom drama, no TED Talk on your intentions, just ownership. Not, I was working on this for hours. I missed, so I missed one thing. No. Confidence doesn't need to prove that, a rationale for why they made an error. They recognize they made an error. And they don't lose their minds over it. All right. And then it doesn't have to be a whole list of reasons. You think the list of reasons supports that it's okay that you made an error. Nobody gives a shit really that you made an error. They just want you to fucking correct it. For God's sake. That's it. You're making a bigger deal out of it when you're losing your shit and offering up every excuse. I was up till 3 a.m. writing that. I worked all weekend. And, so there's one error. No, why don't you crucify me? Why don't you sue me for that? Nobody's trying to sue you. They just want to make sure that when the document goes out, it's accurate and there's no errors so that y'all don't look like a bunch of fools. All right? That's the difference. You cannot expect people to think after you're done with your list of reasons for why you missed a single error in a document, that all of those reasons mean the error, you didn't make the error. You still made the fucking error. Fix it. And this is how your operating system gets revealed. Because ego just wants to be right and to win. And your ego doesn't want anybody else in the room to think that you are less than. Here's the thing. No one thinks that. No one thinks that. You do because you have self-doubt, because you have poor self-esteem, because you're not confident in all of the successful things that you've already accomplished in your life. Because somewhere down the line, no one ever told you that it is acceptable to make errors. I have a surprise for every single one of you. Every one of you. Oh, we make errors every day. Every one of us. Some of you are still out there driving around in Ford vehicles, okay? That's an error. Yeah. Don't worry, we know, we see you. We just don't talk about it. We all make errors, every one of us. And it's okay. So, set your ego aside. Ego approaches conflict or feedback like a battlefield. But confident people approach conflict and feedback like a diagnostic process. Okay? So, that's it. When you get that feedback and you're not happy about it, the first thing an egotistical or ego-driven person thinks is, they're against me. They're insulting me. They're disrespecting me. No, they're not. And confident people know that it's not an attack or it's a disrespect or it's, a problem with you per se. And that's a huge deal, especially in interpersonal relationships. Ego-led conflict turns partners, coworkers, friends, and family members into opponents. And then the goal of the whole situation is not repairing the conflict. The goal is simply victory. And I have news for you. Victory is for races and football games and go Bills, by the way, hockey, go Sabres. It's not for you to be victorious over your lover, your partner, your spouse, your children. That's not what it's about. All right? When all you care about is winning, and you don't care what you do to get that win, you destroy emotional safety for the other half of that relationship. Now, congratulations, darling. You're the undefeated champion of a relationship in which nobody feels safe, including you. What a fucking prize that is. Make sure you put it on the mantle right up there next to your award for resentment. Confidence-led conflict is different. When they don't understand where something is coming from, or there's an opportunity for them to misunderstand, they look for clarity. Help me understand what you mean. This is what I heard. Is this what you intended? I can see where I contributed to that misalignment, that misunderstanding. Now, I don't agree with every single thing, but I do own this part right here that I did. And confident-led people want resolution more than they want to be right. And that last one, resolution, that's a big shift. That is some grown-up work right there. You want resolution to a conflict more than you want to be the winner or to be right. Ego cannot compute that sentence. Confident people can. So ask yourself that question. Do you seek resolution or do you seek, victory? Do you try to understand or do you try to dominate the conversation? And look around you. Don't forget, I'm telling you to audit those that you're holding court for. Do the people around you behave in an ego-led manner, or do they respond to you in a confidence-led manner? All right? Because understand, And I talked about this with, Bruce Lee said this. Be careful what you say to yourself because your mind will believe it. And the same thing is true for those around you. You start to pick up those behaviors when you allow them. All right? When other people are successful, do you feel inspired and genuinely happy for them? Or do you feel diminished? Or, you say things like, well, they had help, they got lucky, they know people. If I had their resources, I could do it too. Some of those things might be true because privilege does exist, access does matter, connections matter. Sometimes luck plays a role. But ego uses those truths as hiding places because every time someone else around them succeeds, they look at it as a comparison and they feel inadequate. I promise you, confident-led people, they're not in a race with you. They are not in a scrum with you. They are only in a competition with the person they were when they woke up in the morning or who they were yesterday. Are they better today than they were yesterday? They don't give a fuck about anybody else in the room and measuring themselves up to that standard. And they measure to their own standard that they've already set and that they're confident in. And that is their character. Okay? Confidence can acknowledge someone else's advantage without using it as an excuse to dismiss their effort or to even abandon their own effort. All right? Ego sees others' successes as evidence of their own personal inadequacy. The confident-led person sees others' successes as evidence of their future possibilities. Ego feels that someone else's shine makes them small. All right? Confident-led people believe that someone else's shine proves that they can also succeed and shine in that matter. Again, two very different operating systems. Confident-led person can say, wow, look at that. That's fucking amazing. And I want to do that. I want to learn that. I want to learn from that. But an ego-led person will say, well, let me explain why that's not impressive. They've already achieved this, and this, and now they're going for that, and there. When is enough enough? Some more of that virtue signaling bullshit. All right? When you cannot celebrate someone else without immediately comparing them to yourself, that's not confidence. That's your self-audit. And as you look around your court and the people that are around you, if they are doing that as well, they're not confident either. You're literally so insecure, okay, that you feel diminished when someone else succeeds. That's wild to me. That is wild to me. Someone said something to me, I don't know, probably like maybe 4 months ago about, oh, you own 2 houses? Yes. One in my home state where I grew up and one in the state that I have adopted. And they said to me, must be nice. Sweetheart, you're 24. I'm a wee bit older than you are. I'd like to think that by now I've, been smart enough to be able to do this. Must be nice. Yeah, it must be nice. I work 7 days a week. That is nice, right? Are you willing to do it? But you're also 24. Why should you have the same portfolio that I have when I'm like 35 years older than you? You shouldn't. Why are you comparing that? It's apples and oranges. So when someone else succeeds, do you feel inspired or do you feel inadequate? If you feel inadequate, that's you. That's your ego. Because you think everybody else is looking at you and going, gee, why aren't you like this? I'm comparing the two of you. No one else is looking at you that way. And if they are, tell them to fuck off. It's none of their business. All right? They're not living your life. They don't know the path you've taken. They don't know your lived experience. They sure as shit don't know mine. All right? Other people's successes are not a threat to you. Their successes prove that success is a possibility. Okay? It's that simple. It's that simple. Okay? Plain as the day is. Now, and let's talk about another operating system that's going to out you. Let's talk about apologies. Because if you want to find ego, watch how someone apologizes. Confident-led people apologize and say, I was wrong. I hurt you. I see the impact. I am sorry. What can I do to repair this? But someone who's ego-led, their apology sounds more like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry, but that wasn't my intent. You're just too sensitive. Or they say, I'm sorry, I guess I'm just a terrible person then. Fine, I apologize. Are you happy now? No, Barbara. We're not happy now. Because that's not a fucking apology. That was a hostage note. Real apology requires accountability without the emotional extortion. Confidence can apologize because confidence doesn't believe that apology makes you worthless. But ego avoids apologies because ego experiences accountability as humiliation and a degradation of their worth. All right. And so instead of being able to say something like, oh, I did something to hurt them and oof, I didn't mean to do that, I should apologize and say, I'm sorry. But instead, they project the, I must be a horrible person. And then that requires everyone in the room to stop addressing the actual issue and start comforting the person who caused the problem. And that's how ego hijacks repair. Confidence doesn't do that. Confidence can say, I don't like that I caused harm, but I know I did it and I can own it without making you feel bad for needing an apology. That's emotional maturity. That's leadership. And that's confidence. So, when you owe someone an apology, do you own the impact or do you explain the intent? Because saying, I'm sorry, dead stop, is authentic. It's accountability. It's understanding that there is still impact no matter your intent. But if you're ego-led, they can't handle it. All right? So you have to do this self-audit and then audit the people around you. Those that don't respect boundaries. Because boundaries will reveal both ego and confidence very quickly. And if someone sets a boundary, how do you respond? Do you respect it? Do you see it as data and information? And do you adjust accordingly? Or do you punish them? Do you need to have that boundary crossed so that you can feel valued? Confident people can tolerate boundaries. Okay? Ego-driven people can't stand the fact that their access has been limited. Confident people say, thank you for telling me what works for you and what doesn't. I would not want to step over that line. Boundaries tell you what someone's limits are. And when you punish others for having limits, that's not love. That's not respect. That's you being a fucking asshole. All right? That's what it is. All right? Ego-led people over-explain, dominate, interrupt, dismiss your feelings and their impact. It's performative. Uses sarcasm as a weapon and turns, questions into accusations. They think that boundaries are rejection. But confident-led people, they can be direct without being cruel. They can be firm without being dismissive, assertive without being arrogant, accountable without groveling. It's that simple. Okay, ego will tell you, I didn't mean it that way. But confidence will tell you, my intent matters, but my impact matters even more. All right? So make sure that you're communicating well. All right? Communication is difficult. I have not always been the best communicator. And I've been ego-led. So listen, I can tell you these things not because I think I'm better than anybody, but because I've lived through those phases. I'm trying to help you get through them faster than I did. Because being ego-led is a waste of time. I'm here to create confidence in your competence, and you have it. You have it. And there's no reason why anybody should come from an ego-fed position. It's unhealthy. It's horribly unhealthy to have low self-esteem, to have no belief in yourself, or to have very low belief in yourself. All right? And that's what it's all about. So audit yourself, audit others. Audit how you respond when you're corrected or how they respond. How do you respond when you're challenged or when they are challenged? The answers to these questions will tell you quite clearly whether you're ego-led or you're confidence-led. Okay? And that's the audit. That's the mirror. And sometimes when you look in the mirror, the lighting, it's rude as hell. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. So while you're auditing yourself, don't forget to audit the people around you, because you need to know whether it's just you that's ego-led, or are you allowing ego-led people too much access to your court? And when I say court, I mean your life, your time, your attention, your energy, your peace, your business, your dreams, your strategies. All right? Not everyone belongs in the throne room. Some people don't even belong in the inner court, the outer court. They belong beyond the gate. Some people belong outside the kingdom entirely. Because access is not owed to anyone. Access is earned, and it's earned through behavior, not words. So if you're trying to determine whether someone deserves closer access to you, stop only listening to what they say and watch what they do. When they're corrected, when others succeed, when others set a boundary, when others are owed an apology. Look and watch. That's the audit. Because trust me, ego-led people can be charming, funny, impressive, talented, successful, and wounded. They can even be generous. But the question is not whether they have good qualities. The question is whether or not they have good character. because you need to know that someone is going to be, when you give them access, that it's safe for them to have that access. Someone can be entertaining and not safe, brilliant and not safe. They can be your family and not be safe. Someone can love you in the only way they know how and still not be safe with full access. And that is not cruelty. That is discernment. And discernment is confidence in action. So let's define your court, because around here, my court is curated. This is not a general admission ticket. The throne room is your safest, most trusted people. These are the people that have earned intimate access. They tell you the truth without cruelty. They celebrate with you without competition. They can correct you without humiliating you. They can receive your boundaries without punishing you. They sit with your humanity without using it against you. When someone weaponizes your vulnerability, okay, they're assholes. They don't belong in the throne room. All right? The people in your throne room, they're rare. Do not fill the throne room with peasants. Don't do it. The uneducated. Don't do it. Your inner court is for people who are trusted, but you don't trust them with everything. They may be colleagues, collaborators, friends, advisors, or family members who have proven maturity in certain areas. They get meaningful access, but not unlimited access. They may be excellent on professionally, career-wise, but emotionally unsafe. They may be supportive personally, but not strategically supportive. They may be fun socially, but never ever trustworthy with your vulnerabilities. So inner court, those individuals still requires a high level of discernment. And the outer court is for acquaintances, casual friends, professional contacts, extended family, community people, and people who are fine in what I would call, from a medical perspective, limited doses. They don't know a thing about any of your deepest wounds. They don't know anything about your unfinished or unacquired dreams. They don't get your raw processing. They get polite, professional, and limited access. Some people are not really necessarily unsafe, but they're just not assigned to the VIP section. All right? And your gate. As much as I say we're not gatekeepers, we kind of are in one respect. We are gatekeepers to our peace. So the gate is for the people that require boundaries. They might not be terrible, but they're definitely not safe with access. They're reactive, competitive, dismissive, draining, chaotic, chronically self-centered. They get short responses. They get clear limits. They get need-to-know information. And they do not get a backstage pass to your life. And then finally, you have those that are outside the kingdom, the queendom, really, okay? And those people outside the queendom have no access. They are the abusive, manipulative, exploitative, dishonest, repeatedly disrespectful, or those that really fuck up your peace, screw with your reputation, your finances, your safety, your sanity. They are not misunderstood. They're not just going through something. They are not your spiritual assignment. They are outside the kingdom and they can heal elsewhere, preferably at a very far fucking distance with paperwork if necessary. Plain and simple. So this week you're going to do the audit. All right. You're going to do an audit. And you're going to make up little, apology tests and see how they would rate. Their boundary tests, right? The celebration test, the correction test. These are for others, right? Think about those times when you've experienced those things with those individuals. All right? And then finally, one important one is about confidentiality. This one is enormous. When you share something vulnerable, do they protect it for you or do they weaponize it later? Do they gossip with others about it? Do they use it to feel superior? Share it to get attention from others? Do they bring it up during conflict? And at the very end of it, does it make you regret trusting them? Confidence-led people protect what was entrusted to them. And an ego-led person uses it as access, uses that access as leverage. If they weaponize your vulnerability, they lose access immediately, and not after 14 more chances, not after you explain basic human decency with a PowerPoint presentation, but immediately, because vulnerability is sacred access. If someone uses your pain, your fear, your uncertainty, or private truths as a weapon, they do not get access to the throne room. They're not in the inner court. They are beyond the gate, beyond the moat, loaded with crocodiles and alligators. If they are sucking your energy dry, nope, outer gate. All right. When you grow, when you change, when you set standards, do they support it, mock it, or resent it? Accuse you of thinking that you're better than them? Confidence-led people allow you to evolve. Ego-led people want you to stay familiar so they can stay comfortable. Some people claim they want to see you rise, but boy, do they resent when you reign. They don't want you to do well. Nope, they don't. They want a version of you that tolerated more, asked for less, and made them feel powerful by shrinking yourselves. They only love the version of you that tolerated the mistreatment that they doled out. They do not love your growth. And that is a dead giveaway. All right, so here you go. All right. Access is earned by behavior, not granted by history. Just because someone has known you forever does not mean they deserve unrestricted access. Just because someone is family does not mean they belong in the throne room. And because they helped you once does not mean they get permanent emotional diplomatic immunity. And just because they say the words, "I love you," does not mean they are safe with your vulnerabilities. So behavior determines access, not title, not history, not proximity, not guilt, not obligation. Behavior. You can love someone till the end of time and still demote their access. You can respect someone and still keep them in the outer court. You can wish people well and keep them outside your queendom. Discernment is not cruelty. It is confidence with standards. All right. So that is your homework assignment this week. It is time for you to audit yourself and everyone you presently have in your court and determine where they really belong as far as access is concerned, to keep you on the up and up. So run those 2 audits. First, audit thyself to determine whether you're ego-led or confident-led. And then audit your court. Who has access to you? Who respects your boundaries? Who can you celebrate with? Who protects your vulnerabilities? And who has been sitting in the throne room with muddy boots, bad manners, and absolutely should have their invitation revoked? That is your assignment. Audit thyself, audit the court, and then adjust access accordingly. Because confidence is not just knowing who you are. Confidence is being able to discern who should get access and who shouldn't. You are not, just so we don't get this twisted, okay, friends? You are not auditing yourself to create shame. You are auditing yourself to create choice. Because once you can see the behavior, you can interrupt the behavior. And once you interrupt it, you can choose a different one. And that's how we move from ego-led reaction to confidence-led responses. Most of us are not always ego-led everywhere or even confidence-led everywhere. Okay, you may be confidence-led at work and ego-led at home. You could be confidence-led as a parent and ego-led as a partner. You may be confidence-led in your expertise and ego-led when you are learning something new. So just understand, being ego-led occasionally doesn't make you broken, but it does make you responsible. And when you're doing this audit, you may realize there are some people around you that you've been giving access to that they don't deserve, that they have not earned. You may realize people need to be moved around in your court, and that doesn't make you cruel. All right. So let's get it done. Be sure to email me, text me, and let me know what's happening, how your audits are going. I'd always love to hear about it. And then next episode, we're going to move into execution, action. We're going to talk about how to build real confidence, not the performative bullshit, not the fake it till you make it nonsense, not the I'm fabulous while your life is held together by denial and lip gloss. All right? We're going to talk about actual behaviors that build confidence, self-esteem, emotional regulation, boundaries, skill mastery, and internal authority. Because confidence is not a mood. It is a practice. Okay? Don't forget it. That's important. All right. For yourself and for others, do the audit. All right, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I know this was a long one. I appreciate you hanging in there tough, but it's important. This is truly an important exercise. Now, I fully expect to see all of you back here next week for your Hump Day Guilty Pleasure at the Salty Goddess Podcast every Wednesday, 5 a.m. I'm Margaret. Be sure to follow, share, subscribe, and download. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all again next week.